Okay.
Welcome to SAS Daily Podcast. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. And thank you guys for subscribing. We're blessed enough to have an interview with a pastor actually here from Eastern Kentucky in Perry County. Appreciate what you do, man. By the way, ministries in prison and stuff. That's great of you, man. Pastor Mark
Yeah.
Tabata. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Appreciate you taking the time out of your long day to be on, man. Definitely. How you doing, Fort Tons?
Huh?
Oh, I was talking to somebody on TikTok. My bad.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. So how long have you been a pastor?
Well, I've been a gospel preacher going on 20, 21 years. Graduated preaching school back in 2001 and been living in Hazard since 2005.
That's cool, man. And you've had like ghost hunting experience as well. Like,
We've dealt with a lot of paranormal experiences in Hazard. Um, I wouldn't probably call them ghost hunting, but unless you're talking about like them trying to hunt us. But yeah, we've dealt with a whole lot in the last several years in this area. A lot of strange things.
that's awesome, man. Definitely. So what has been your ghost experiences? Then?
Well, I think a lot of it stems from the fact of what we do in ministry in this area. Um, we've been blessed in this these Eastern Kentucky parts, to work with a lot of people who are involved in things like paganism, Wicca, Satanism. In the last few years, we've baptized, I think we counted 11 former witches and two former Satanists in this area. And so a lot of that has gone hand in hand with some of the paranormal experiences we have dealt with. Did you say something?
Yeah, that's definitely cool, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's been an adventure. We we have just dealt with so many different things. The Bible teaches us about the spiritual world, and a lot of the people I work with, they come from a background of doubting the Bible, and that's okay. The Bible actually encourages us to seek out and look for evidences of things. Like God said in Isaiah 1 verse 18, come now and let us reason together. And the Bible tells Christians in 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks a reason of the hope that is in you, yet with meekness and fear. And so whenever I work with my friends coming from these pagan backgrounds, we almost always start with this subjective evidences. How you can trust the Bible. How do you know what the Bible teaches about the spirit world is true? And sorry, usually I share all kinds of different evidences with them. Evidences from like things such as the supernatural unity of the Bible. There's a theme running from Genesis 1:1 all the way to the end of Revelation chapter 22. And the theme is Jesus Christ. I'll give you an example of this. In Genesis chapter 5, about 1,500 years before Christ was born into the world, we are told the name of 10 men from Adam to Noah. Their names are Adam, Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. And when you go back and look at what their names mean, they literally mean man appointed to mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down teaching, and his death will bring the brokenhearted peace. So, like a perfect, powerful example there of prophecy and fulfillment and the unity of the Bible. And a lot of the ones that I work with around the area, they worship the pagan gods and goddesses, not realizing that the Bible actually identifies them for us, that tells us who they are and that they're real and that they are liars. I'll give you a perfect example. If I talk too much, just tell me, okay?
No, you're good,
I've only
man.
done one of these. I've only done one of these things before, and I hope it's all right. But so a couple years ago, I was working with a nice lady in jail, and I remember she came out and they sat down, ladies from that cell, and she started laughing. And I was like, "It's nice to meet you." And she told me, she said, "I don't think you're going to like me." I said, "Well, I already like you." I said, "Why do you think that?" And she said, "Well, uh, I'm a pagan, I'm a witch, and I don't believe in your God. And I believe that book you're holding is a book of fairy tales." I said, "That's fine. That's where we'll start." And so she started telling me about the goddesses and the gods that she worships. And I think she was very surprised to learn that the Bible actually talks about the reality of those beings. And I told her, I said, "They're real. I have no doubt about that." The Bible talks about in Psalm 82 and verse 1 that God sits down among the council of the gods. And then in verse 6, he identifies who those gods are. They are the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God from Genesis 6, fallen angels who have come down to earth and who are trying to deceive mankind. But, and we went into a great deal of study about that in Psalm 96 and verse 5. The gods of the peoples, the gods of the nations are demons. And we had a very long discussion about who they are and the fact that they are truly existent beings, but they're not really God. When you get back and boil it down, there's only one eternal being, one true God, but they are powerful beings that masquerade to try to deceive us. And you can see that. I mean, they're always trying to hurt people. They're not actually trying to help. That's what they tell us. But when you boil it down and look at what they do, I remember one night I had baptized a friend of mine, and we were up at his house having a Bible study, and there was a being who had been manifesting in his home for some time, and we dealt with it and got rid of it. And I got a text message from my wife, and she said that something had grabbed her by the hair and pulled her at her house. And I've worked with people who are scratched, cut, um, worked with a lot of people who've been uh, afflicted in a lot of different ways by unseen things. I worked for I've worked for a year or two with a drug rehab in another part of Kentucky. They used to let me come in and minister and teach. And some of the things that the men in that place had been through regarding the spiritual world and the supernatural were terrifying. And the reason why a lot of them had been exposed to these things is because of something called pharmakia. In Revelation chapter 9, John talks about how during the Christian age, there will be some people who refuse to repent of their sorceries. And the New King James Version has a footnote there that says, or drugs. And I was like, why would it say that? Why would it say drugs? And the Greek word used there is pharmakia, where we get our word pharmacies and pharmaceuticals. And the word had reference among the Jewish people eventually to the way that the abuse of drugs could open up a person to the spirit world. And so a lot of people in this area, we work with a lot of addicts. A lot of them are inadvertently opening the doorway to the spirit world through the abuse of drugs. It's a form of witchcraft, and they don't even realize they're practicing it a lot of times. So there's been quite a few things.
Now, have you like heard from prisoners? Like, have they seen anything like apparitions? Have they heard any noises or
Oh,
voices?
yes. Yes. Did you say prisoners?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
In prison, while they're in prison is what I mean.
Yes. We have worked with quite a few inmates who've gone through some very traumatic experiences with the spirit world in jail. Um, there was there was a young man I worked with for a while. Um, I believe that there's a good chance he was severely demonically afflicted. Um, there was a time when one night we went in there. This is before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we had to stop everything, going in. We just started back about a month and a half ago. But one night I had a group of guys who came in, and the jail used to let me come in on Sundays from 3 to midnight. And I was there the last cell of the night. I was about ready to fall over. And they brought in this last group. Every time they'd come in, I would shake their hand and, tell them, I'm Mark Tabata, minister with the Couchtown Church of Christ. And, it's nice to meet you. There's a guy that came in, he wouldn't shake my hand. I was like, well, whatever, that's fine. So they all sat down, and I asked him, I said, what would you all like to learn about tonight? What would you like to talk about? And a couple of them said, can you teach us about demons? I said, yes, I will teach you who they are, what they are, and how you can have victory over them through Christ Jesus, which is the only way to have victory over them. And that young man had a adverse reaction to that, and he ended up leaving. I was informed that he was involved in Satanism. I came back the next week, and we had a Bible discussion, and there were some very strange things that happened during that discussion. He began manifesting different personalities, I would say. They had not been able to find anything, from what I was told, diagnosable medically with him. And came back another time, and he wanted to speak to me privately. So they let us go back to one of the rooms in there, and we were talking, and he asked me, he said, are you a crusader? And I said, I'm not sure what that means, bro. I said, I'm just a Christian. And he said, do you convert people? I said, yes, that's part of being a Christian. You tell people about Jesus Christ. And he explained to me that he was a crusader for his demons. And I said, okay. There was another time when not long after I moved to Hazard. I was 25 years old, and I baptized this gentleman. We were doing a follow-up Bible study, and he came up to me one night at the Bible study, and he said, Brother Mark, I need to talk to you about something. And I said, okay, what's on your mind, bro? And he said, well, you know how loud you are. And I was like, okay, is that where we're going with this? Okay. But I was like, yeah, I know. And he said, when you start preaching, something has started screaming at me. So I can't even hear you. And you know how loud you are. I said, yeah, I know you made it clear. And I was like, what is going on here? And I was like, well, I was thinking now maybe he's got some mental issues. I don't know. So I encouraged him to talk to a doctor. He did. They couldn't find anything. And then he started doing something, which is not often, it was not a good thing to do. He started writing down what this thing was telling him. And it was telling him things about me from where I grew up. No one around here knew that stuff. I grew up 9 hours, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours from here. And I just moved here a few months earlier. So I contacted a member of our congregation, of our church family, and I asked her if she would join me in a day of prayer and fasting for him, because Jesus said in Mark 9:29 that some demons only go out by prayer and fasting. And so I said, we're not going to tell anyone we're doing this, not even him. She agreed. So that Saturday, she stayed home and prayed and fasted. I stayed home and prayed and fasted. And then the next day, he comes up to me at church and he says, Brother Mark, you're not going to believe this. I said, what's up? And he said, you remember that demon? I said, yes. He said, it's gone. It told me last night it was being cast out and it's not here anymore. And me and the sister told him that we had had a day of prayer and fasting for him. And we just, give all the glory to God. But since we've moved to Hazard, we've had so many experiences with, there was a guy, there was a man who was a Satanist. He tried to tell his coven to come kill us. I've got the text messages that he sent to his coven members. He doesn't know that one of the people had baptized him, and or one of the people he knew who was involved in all this, I baptized him, and he told them my name and address and my phone number, and he said his church, which I don't have a church, it's the Church of Christ, but he said his church has food boxes, use that and get him out. And one of them said, what do you want us to do? And he said, and I quote, I want him dead, I want his family dead, I want his house burnt to the ground. And I invited them all to come out and meet with me and talk or whatever, and none of them would. But those things are very real. Those religions, those forces, Paul said, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places in Ephesians 6 and verse 12. And all those phrases were used in the first century to describe different levels and different types of spirit beings. So there's a war going on, and it's very real. And that's one of the reasons why the Bible tells us to follow Christ and his word, and especially to beware of necromancy. It's a very dangerous thing to try to communicate with the dead. I was having a Bible study not long ago with a member of the
That's
Roman Catholic.
actually, I don't mean to cut you off, but that's
It's okay,
actually
good.
the number one reason why I'm not a ghost hunter anymore. I quit being a ghost hunter about 2013, 2012, something like that.
I feel you. I bet you had a lot of interesting experiences too.
Yep, I do. I don't believe that the ghosts are actually the people that died. I believe that it is possibly demonic entities mimicking the people that died's voice. What's your thoughts on that? I don't know if you agree or
I
disagree.
feel you. Well, that's a good question. So it's an interesting thing when you go back and look at the word demon. The word demon is from the Greek daimon, and when you go back and look at the way the word was used historically during the times the Bible was being written, you find out some interesting things. The word actually had reference primarily to two things among the Jews and the Greeks. The New Testament, of course, was written in the Greek language. So the first thing is back in Genesis 6 1 to 4. The Bible talks about a time in the history of the world when some of the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which are angels, we see that from Job 1 6 and Job 2 1 and 2 and Job 38 4 to 7. The angels came down to earth and had relations with human women and had children with them, which the Bible refers to as the Nephilim. And it's translated in English with the word giants. We know from books outside the Bible they were very wicked, like Jasher, Jubilees, First Enoch, which these are not in the Bible and they're not inspired, but the Bible refers to them and encourages people to read through them and study them, learn from them. And one of the things you learn is that these Nephilim were extremely, extremely wicked. They enslaved humanity. They practiced things like ritualistic fornication, vampirism. it became so bad that God decided to destroy them in the flood. And so the Bible talks about, and the geological evidence confirms, as well as the sociological evidence, historical evidence, archaeological evidence, that the flood happened. And we're told in First Enoch, which is one of the books the Bible refers to and encourages people to read. It's referenced over 100 times in the Bible. First Enoch 15. We are told that these Nephilim were destroyed during the flood, and their spirits were left in the earth, and they became evil spirits, which the Greek translation there of First Enoch, demons. So that's one way the word was used. Another way among the Greeks, there's a man by the name of Alexander Campbell. He wrote a study called what was it? Something demonology. Sorry, my mind's a little bit shocked and I'm tired. But he did a study on demonology, and he pointed out that when you go back and look at the way the word was used among the Greeks, the word demon among the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans, the Assyrians, the Jews, and the Christians for a while, the word actually had reference to the spirits of the unsaved dead. So I kind of believe that there's a possibility that there could be the unsaved dead who are in the world. But I also believe that they are the word, many of the examples of demonization in our world could be the Nephilim. So I believe it's kind of both of those things. This is something that comes up like we have had. I had a Bible study not long ago with a member of the Roman Catholic Church, and we were talking about the Bible teaching regarding praying to the dead. The Bible absolutely opposes that. Like in Isaiah chapter 8, God specifically told the people, why would you seek counsel from the dead when you have the living God? And God rebuked them for doing that. That can open up doorways. I'll give you a perfect example. You ever heard of something called a familiar spirit? Okay. Well, throughout the Old Testament, there are references to something called familiar spirits. And for a long time, I did not really know what that meant until recently I did a big study on it. And I found out that a familiar spirit has reference to either a spirit that does three things or three different types of spirits that do one thing. Okay. So the word familiar spirit, sometimes they were used to have reference to a spirit that was familiar to someone. So, like in 1 Samuel 28, you have Saul calling up Samuel. He was dead, and he called up the familiar spirit of Samuel. That's one example. Another one, sometimes the familiar spirit, the Hebrew actually can be rendered the spirit of the family. And so it had reference to a spirit that could be passed down generationally to people, to different family members. And then there was a third one, or a third thing it did, where it would try to initiate in the life of the person it was afflicting the same thing it had brought forth in that person's parents or ancestors. So the idea of a generational curse is inherent there. You know, a lot of times you notice that people follow the same patterns a lot of times in their families. I mean, that could be genetics, it could be environment, and it could also be this. So the Bible actually says a whole lot about these things. One of the ones we've been dealing with more recently has been dealing with alien abductions in this area.
I love that stuff, man. I'm more
Okay,
into
okay.
UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot. I'm actually do some investigational stuff when it comes to UFO and Bigfoot and stuff like that. I'm not into ghost hunting. I don't really like talking ghost hunting to be honest, much to be honest, from
I
my
feel you.
experiences and stuff.
I feel
Yeah,
you.
I do have some experiences. You're right. I've had a mist go through my hand before and stuff when I was a little kid. So yeah, I do have experiences, and I've recorded voices on voice recorders and ghost boxes and all that. But yeah, I'm definitely
Mhm.
glad to not be ghost hunting no more. To be honest.
I feel you, bro. I feel you. You mentioned also Bigfoot. Have you had experiences with that in this area?
Not me personally, but I do know people that have seen Bigfoot around here. Actually, around the Cars Fork Lake area here in Knott County, I know of one sighting for sure that and there was a Bigfoot researcher here from Knott County that passed away sadly a year ago, and he had some uh experiences and had people tell him all them stories, and he told me some. So secondhand knowledge, but it's people he trusted, and I trust him because he wouldn't lie or anything. So
I didn't know there was
yeah,
a book. I didn't know there was a Bigfoot hunter in this area.
yeah. Well, he's a Bigfoot. He was a Bigfoot researcher, not hunter. Yeah,
I never knew there was
there's
someone around
actually
here who
quite a
did that.
few around here. Actually,
I did not know that. I've worked with some people who've had sightings in this area up at Car Fork and what's that other place? The other lake, uh,
Buckhorn.
Buckhorn. I've worked with a couple of people who've had sightings up there.
Yeah,
And what do you think about that?
I definitely think it's real, but I just think it's an ape-like creature.
I feel you. I feel you. Um, I kind of lean towards that possibility also. But I always keep in mind also one of the things the book of Jasher tells us. It's one of those books that the Bible refers to, like in Joshua 10:13. But Jasher talks about the way that some of the fallen angels and the Nephilim, they actually tried to combine different genomes and tried to mix species. And it could very well be that's the origin of things like the story of Pegasus and of mermaids. Um, some of those things, which I believe in also, some of those things could possibly tie back to those things as well. Um, some of the people I've worked with regarding the aliens, um, I believe that there's a very strong, sometimes occult connection to things like that. That's been our experience in this area. Um, we worked with a young man. There was a man I baptized. He was a former witch, and we spent some time studying, and he obeyed the gospel. And he asked me to work with another friend of his, and so we did. Real nice guy. Had Bible study at Cezanne, and he wanted to get baptized about 6 hours later. Well, where the part of town where they were living in, there have been a lot of people who've been having UFO experiences, and
Where's this at?
it's actually up by between Hazard and Jackson,
Oh, okay.
down near Lost Creek, down that way.
Yeah.
Um, and when we were baptizing him, we were videotaping it on my phone. Well, afterwards, me and a couple friends from church here, we went to Dairy Queen to get a Blizzard, celebrate. I'm driving down the road. My friends are in the back seat, and all of a sudden, one of my friends screams, and I was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I thought I hit someone, and she was like, "Marcus, you've got to see this." It's like, okay. So in the video, at the moment when he had confessed Jesus Christ as Lord, as the Son of God, before we baptized him, something showed up in the video at the back of the church building. It was there for maybe 4 seconds, and then it was gone. And I took one of those like snapshots or whatever, and in the snapshot, when you look at it, you can zoom in. you can see it plain as day. It's a Roswell gray. You know how they're usually referred to as the Roswell Grays, the little gray man with big black eyes.
Yeah.
Um, he was there, and a lot of people aren't aware of the occult history behind the Roswell crash. Um, Back in the 1920s, there was a man by the name of Aleister Crowley, and he was a very prominent occultist. Well, he performed a ceremony called the Alalantra Working. And during that, he said he opened up a doorway to the spirit world, and something came through, and he drew a picture of it. He called it Lam, Lam. This thing told him that today we are known as angels and demons. Tomorrow we'll be known by a different name. And you can Google it and type in Lam Crowley drawing, and it brings it up, and it looks like spitting image of a Roswell Gray. Well, in the 1940s, he had two disciples, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. Parsons became one of the great scientists at NASA, and Hubbard became the founder of the Church of Scientology. So they went out to the Mojave Desert right outside Roswell, and they performed a variation of that same ceremony called the Babylon Working. Within a couple weeks, you had the Roswell crash. You had this string of UFO sightings that started all over America. Well, later, Parsons was investigated by the CIA because there were suspicions that he was selling NASA rocket technology to Mossad. Well, they found out about his connection to Roswell, and they acknowledged that they believed that there was a connection. The government actually formed a group called the Collins Elite to investigate the UFO phenomena in America. And they came to the conclusion that these things are saying they're from another planet, but they're not. They're actually deceiving us, and that they are interdimensional beings, which, interestingly enough, is also the conclusion of many prominent ufologists like Dr. Hynek, Jacques Vallée, Philip Mbrongo. Several of them have acknowledged, after investigating carefully for years, that the evidence suggests that these things are actually some kind of spiritual or interdimensional being. Jacques Vallée went so far as to say, after years of study, they're attempting to manipulate our belief system. And that was the conclusion also of the Collins Elite. So there's some very fascinating and frightening connections there between UFOs and occultism. A couple of the people I've worked with here in Hazard who've gone through some of these things, the aliens come a long way just to tell them you can't trust the Bible or Jesus Christ. And I find that very unusual. Why would ET fly billions of light years to Earth to throw up on Jesus Christ? And so there's a lot. But a lot of people we've worked with who've gone through these things, sadly, they've been shunned by a lot of Christians because some of the Christians they've talked with, they don't want anything to do with any of this stuff. And that's sad. That's unfortunate because the church is here to help. It's one of the reasons why God has left us here, to be a help and a light, pointing people to Jesus. And that's another thing. Jesus is the one who's able to break all those bonds. He's the one who's able to bring that deliverance. So many people, there was a guy by the name of Joe Jordan. He was a agnostic for a long time. And then he worked for MUFON. And he became a follower of Christ. And he was amazed to find out that there were so many stories of people who were going through alien abduction experiences who, when they called out to Jesus Christ, stopped. And he was amazed to find out that other ufologists he talked to told him the same thing. They said, we're going off the record here, we didn't know what to make of this. But they had experiences, everyone he talked to, of people they worked with who, when they called out to Jesus Christ, those things, they were stopped in their tracks. So I think there's definitely some things to consider with all of this. All of this.
Have you heard anything about dogmen in general?
Not in this area where I'm from, in West Virginia. I have. What I've seen, what one of the things I've come across here in that same genre are skinwalkers and shapeshifters. I've worked with a couple people, a few people in this area who have been involved with some situations where there were actually people that they witnessed transforming. These people weren't tripping; they were. I'll just put that little disclaimer in. They were not there geeking or anything, but they witnessed these things, and I know someone in this area who had a very frightening experience with some of those things. There was another man I worked with. He's a friend of mine. Where he's from, he had experiences growing up where he grew up with Bigfoot and shapeshifters and lots of things like that. And others have seen those things around here too. So I believe that, when you look at the Bible, and if the Bible's the Word of God, and if the Bible teaches the spirit world exists, it exists. And it goes deep. It goes really, really deep. Some of those things can be very frightening, but Jesus is the answer. He's the answer.
Yeah. Now, what part of West Virginia are you from, man? Are you from Mothman?
Actually, I have family in that area, Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
I was raised in the Panhandle, but then when I was about 16 or so, somewhere around there, I have a hard time remembering nowadays. I moved from the small town I grew up in, moved to Charleston, and went from a high school of 400 to 1,800 overnight in the middle of my junior year of high school. You want to talk about a frightening time? That was pretty scary. But Mothman, that's another interesting thing. There's some evidence. I don't know if Mothman is evil. I don't know. Because there are some indications that he is just found almost like a harbinger, where something catastrophic is going to happen. So is it something evil? Is it something maybe trying to warn people? I don't know. I do know from, there's a movie based about this. I think it's Mothman Prophecies, or Mothman Prophecies or something.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Is that what it is? It's based on a book. And when you go back and read the book, you find out that there were some things that were very unusual that this Mothman was doing, whatever it was. And that kind of makes me suspect it might not be something good. I don't know. But I also know at the same time, the Bible tells us about the fact that there are angels. Sometimes they're at work in the world. Hebrews 1:14 says they work even today on behalf of those who will be heirs of salvation. And, John talks about the fact that they are out trying to share the good news of Jesus Christ. So I always try to keep that in mind too. There's a lot of bad, but there's a lot of good too. There are a lot of forces at work for us and with us. That encourages me. I was telling someone not long ago, a lot of times I see so much of the bad spiritual. I mean, the demonic. And I told him, I said, sometimes I wish I'd see more of the other side. And he said, well, maybe one day you will. And maybe one day I won't. Maybe they're working and I'm just not supposed to see them. I just see what they do, some of the works that they do. So uh, yeah, that's definitely some interesting things about Mothman too.
Yeah, I've actually had the guy that makes the costumes for the Mothman Museum there in Point Pleasant on. That was a very great interview. He actually had some of the original letters of like the first two witnesses wrote back together of the men in
Wow.
black coming to each other. Yeah, it was very interesting. I'm pretty
Wait a
sure
minute,
he
what was that last
showed.
thing you said? What was the last thing you said? The Men in Black?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Man in Black visit people in Point Pleasant, and it was two written letters that two different people had. He had the original copies.
That's creepy. I
He
didn't know about
has the
that.
original copies. I mean,
The Men in Black were visiting people in Point Pleasant over Mothman.
yeah.
Wow. Well, that's creepy. What's going on with that? Do you think?
There's actually some people think that Mothman is an alien, and the Man in Black are aliens as well. So I don't know. It's
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah,
That is interesting. I never heard that. I'm gonna think about that one.
yeah. I've had Mothman, like Mothman researchers on. I've had the biggest dogman researcher on out there. Some of the biggest Bigfoot researchers. I do wrestling stuff. I've had Kid Cash from WWE on.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Kid
do good
who?
stuff, man.
That's awesome. Did you say Kid Cash?
Yeah,
Kid Cash. Okay. Okay. You're going to have to send me a link to your podcast so I can download these episodes and listen to them.
appreciate that, man.
I'm really curious. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I'd never heard. It's interesting you mentioned that about the government because the government's been involved in a whole lot of psychical research,
yeah.
like
You're talking
Dave
about
Hunt.
MK Ultra?
Yes, MK Ultra. Yes, Paperclip, Operation Paperclip. There's so much we got from the Nazis. It's untelling. And goodness, Kurt Barker, his experiences at the hands of uh, Operation Paperclip and MK Ultra. But there's a book written by Dave Hunt, Occult Invasion, in which he talks about and documents, or no, Occult Explosion. Sorry, it's either explosion or invasion. I can't remember. But he documents declassified files the CIA has finally made public, where they were investigating all kinds of things like astral projection, remote viewing. The TV show. Have you seen Stranger Things?
Yeah,
Yes, a lot of that is based on. Well, I'm not saying the show is based on. What I'm saying is the government was involved in all those things.
yeah.
So that's interesting,
Government's
especially when you think
involved in a
about the
lot of
spiritual.
things.
Yeah, they are, man. That's true. I mean, do you know, like we were talking about earlier with the animals, our
Yeah,
government's doing stuff like that. There's actually a project called Project Chimera,
yeah.
and have you heard of it?
Maybe that's what Bigfoot is, man. Maybe they created Bigfoot.
Maybe,
Dog man.
maybe.
Maybe they the ones that created the aliens too. You never know.
Hey, it wouldn't surprise me, dude. I don't
No.
trust government. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 4 verse 4 that Satan's the God of this world, and I believe that. But like back in the early 2000s, Ken Johnson documents this in his book, investigating the book of Enoch. Can't remember the name of the book, but he documents the experiments that were being done where actually the government was making things like glow in the dark mice, and they were putting human ears on animals just to see what all they could get away with. That's the same stuff the Nephilim were doing before God brought the judgment. We're doing the same things.
Yeah.
That's creepy. That's creepy. Sorry.
You
That's
need to
very
look this
concerning.
up. There's actually what you was talking about Nephilims. There's actually supposedly there's a video. I don't know if it's real or not of the army finding a Nephilim like here recently that was dead.
Talking about the Afghan giant or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that, or Kandahar giant.
yep.
Is that? Yeah, I've heard about that. Did you know that there's actually a Nephilim mound in this area? I was
Wow.
shocked to find that out. I took two members of our church family about 2 years ago to help them get their license in Jackson because for whatever reason Kentucky's decided to put everything in Jackson. What the heck? I don't even know what to think about that. But we were down there, and they were closed for some reason. So we had to wait. Oh, it's probably lunchtime. So we had to wait for like an hour. So there was a museum down there. And so I was like, oh, there's a museum in Jackson. So we went in and we were looking around. There was an entire display of giants artifacts from the area. And I was like, what is going on? Well, I started talking to this lady who was there, and she was telling me about how when she was a little girl and being raised in the area, her daddy was a farmer, and she had gone out with him one day, and they dug up a giant skeleton.
Wow.
And they contacted the Smithsonian. And guess what happened? Smithsonian come and took it for whatever reason. Well, actually, Tom Horn, he's got a very good documentary on why the Smithsonian so adamant about these things. It goes back to Darwinian evolution. Anything that supports the Bible timeline, a lot of people want to get rid of. So there's always that possibility. But there's actually a town called Quicksand.
Yep.
She was telling me about. I've never been to it, but it's between Hazard and Jackson somewhere. And she said there's a Nephilim mound there.
It actually goes into Knott County a little bit too.
Does it? I didn't know
It's a
that.
big area.
Huh?
It's a big area.
A big area. I feel you. Someday I want to go down there and check it out. Where I went to preaching school, it is built on mounds. The town I went to preaching school in, graduated preaching school from, is called Moundsville. So the entire town is built on Nephilim mounds, or on mounds. Which I believe they're Nephilim mounds. But you know what's interesting? Have you ever seen the show Paranormal State?
Uh-uh.
There's a guy named Ryan Buell from Paranormal Research Society, and they used to go ghost hunting and all this stuff. And he went up there to Moundsville State Penitentiary, which is exactly opposite of the Nephilim mound, or the mounds that are remaining. This is the only place he ran screaming from in all the years he investigated, was the Moundsville prison. So at least that I remember hearing about. So,
You've been there before?
pardon?
You've been there before?
To the Moundsville jail and prison? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually it's one of the most haunted sites in West Virginia history.
Wow.
Um, the number of people who were killed there, I'm trying to remember. The last tour guide I spoke to said that he compared it to what's that one that they made the movie about with Sean Connery and Cage. You know what I'm talking about? They made a movie about a prison with Sean Connery and Nicholas Cage.
No.
It's a real famous prison. I can't remember where it is, but they said that in that prison, in all the years it was open, there had been like some 30 deaths. In the Moundsville prison, when they started keeping record back in the 1960s of the deaths, over 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was eventually closed down. Um, we've had some very creepy things happen there that I've caught on film also. Um, I walked, there was a friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine, we went up there and walked inside this serial killer of a guy named Red Snyder. And he had killed a bunch of people and he got shanked 37 times. And there was a mirror hanging on the wall, and I took a picture of myself in the mirror. I thought, good little souvenir, right? The next day, we're on our way back to Hazard, and we stopped in Charleston, Olive Garden at Quarter G. And in the picture, we were looking at the pictures. There is a purple woman standing over my shoulder, looking at me plain as day. And it's pretty bizarre. I'll send you a picture of it later. But yeah, just all kinds of things.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Definitely appreciate you being on, brother. I know you got to be up early in the morning.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate what you're doing. If you ever in the Couchtown area, come see us, man. We'd love to have you up here at church with us. That'd be awesome.
Definitely appreciate that. Now tell everybody out there what days and times you have church and exactly where your church is located
Okay. Well, the Couchtown Church of Christ is located at 1607 Couchtown Road in Busy, Kentucky. You turn left at Caldwell Video. It's 2 miles up there on the left. Can't miss it.
Is that in
Um,
Perry County?
yeah, it's in Perry County. Take exit 56, and it's right up the road from there. Um, pardon me. We do right now. We're doing mostly drive-in church ever since the pandemic. We went to open our church building last year, and it's plumb full mold. Can't use our church building, so we do a lot of drive-in church, and I do it on Facebook Live here also Sundays at 11 ish, and we usually have we try to have our substance abuse meetings Wednesdays at 1 here in the annex building right beside our church. Um, if you're interested in studying about anything with the Bible or anything, check out www.marktabata.com. It's my WordPress page. We got lots of articles and studies on there. I think about, I don't know, 3 or 4,000 that I've done in the last few years on all kinds of topics. And if we can help you in any way, just let us know. Jesus is the answer to everything. So if we can help you in any way, just please let us know. We're imperfect people trying to serve the perfect Christ, but the beauty is he loves us in our imperfections. So thanks for having me.
This has been the interview with Pastor Mark Tabata. Appreciate him being on. Y'all have a good night, and God bless.
Hey,